Hello everyone, so I'm here today to do another video about the Read Around the World challenge, and this time is going to be about the Nordic countries, so that includes Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway and Sweden. And I have read quite a few books from this area, so bear with me. Let's start with Denmark. So from Denmark I have read Islands by Siri, Ranva, Jacobsen, which is actually about the Faroe Islands, which are considered part of Denmark. This was kind of like auto-memoir thing about the author going away and then coming back to the Faroe Islands and her feelings about the Faroe Islands. It was kind of boring, to be honest. Then I also read After the Sun by Jonas. I think I have a review for it because it was part of the International Booker last year, I think. It's a collection of very weird short stories and I didn't quite get along with them, so that's probably not a good recommendation either. But the next two books I did like. So the next one is The Employees by Olga Ravn, which I have another review as well because it was also part of the International Booker a couple of years ago. And this is a very interesting book. It's kind of written in very small sections that are called like employee 104 or like interview 155 or something, and it's kind of science fiction about this spaceship in which they are taking objects from one place to another, and some of the people in the spaceships are humans and some of them are robots, and in principle they don't make distinctions of them, but they of course are different. And in each interview they don't tell you if it's a robot or a human, and you kind of have to guess. And I loved how this like blur that line, because the way that they are talking about things, sometimes they made you think it was a certain thing and then you discover that it was a different thing. So it was to me it was really poignant into what actually makes us human and if it's actually that special or not. So yeah, really nice. And then the other book that I read for Denmark was the completed works of Hans Christian Andersen, and this is a classic and it's just very nostalgic because a lot of the stories I actually didn't know, but a lot of the stories are familiar to most of us, like The Little Mermaid, like the Princess and the Pea and stuff like that. So yeah, just very nostalgic. Not much more to say about that. Then for Finland I read White Hunger by Aki Ollikainen, and that was also nominated for the International Booker quite a while ago. And it's a very short book about this famine that they had in Finland a while ago, and it really goes into the how your thinking process might be in a situation like that. Like, let's say if you have a little bit of food, will you save it so that you have enough food for a few days and hopefully will be able to survive until the next time you have food? Or will you share it with the people around you that are literally dying out of hunger and then hope that the next day someone else will share with you? And it was very interesting. Again, a lot about the human nature and what we as humans kind of want to do and don't want to do. It's not about the characters. There are a lot of characters and we don't go in detail about any of them. And it's also not about any plot. So that's something you might want to have into account when you go into this book. But I think that the theme was very well explored. Then for Iceland I have read quite a bit. I went through a phase in which I was obsessed with Iceland about 20 years ago. So I read a lot of the classics. I read a lot of Halldor Laxness. I also read some other Augur Ava Olafsdottir and some sagas and all kinds of things. Also some some more crimey books, which obviously it's a lot of the things that are written in the Nordic countries. But from those, I would recommend, I think the Iceland Spell, is that how it's called? Iceland Spell by Halldor Laxness was my favorite from all of them. It's about this man in the, I think it was 1700s, around that time, and the life in that time, like there were some witch hunting, not really, like I think they, in the whole witch hunting history of Iceland, they killed 12 women maybe, so it's not that representative, but it still was a thing in that time. And this man also, like, he's kind of poor and he has to survive. And I read this like a long time ago, and I still remember this image of this man that was going into somewhere and he was just walking for like 2 days, and it was winter, so it was really cold, so he had to sleep in this cave, and he knew the cave. He did that walk a few times a year, so he knew that cave. And he had in the cave, he had this huge rock that whenever he was sleeping and he woke up because it was too cold, he would just take that huge rock and take it and put it down a couple of times so that he warmed up by the sport, and that's how he slept through the night. So he didn't sleep through the night. Every 2-3 hours he had to wake up and do some weightlifting for like 15 minutes and go back to sleep, which was it was a weird thing, and it's still in my brain. But yeah, I found this the most interesting of the Halldor Laxness. The other ones are a little bit more about, I don't know, family dynamics and more sedentary. There was also one about this man that went to be a musician, I think it was London, and he came back and how he didn't understand Icelandic culture anymore. But yeah, I think those are more like stories that feel more familiar. And this one about Iceland Spell, I think it was the one that was the most representative of the country. And then if you want something a little bit more cozy, I think Augur Ava Olafsdottir has some really nice books. I haven't read Miss Iceland, but I've read Hotel Silence, which was recently, and that's very heartwarming. Not about Iceland, but it's very heartwarming. And I have also read The Greenhouse and The Woman is an Island, which, if I remember correctly, because I read them a long time ago, those ones are more crimey based, but still she's an interesting author. And then another one that I don't know why, but I did really like at the time was 101 Reykjavik by Hallgrimur Helgason. I hope I didn't butcher that too much, but that one is about a messed up 20-something-year-old, if I remember correctly. And I think one of the reasons I liked it is because that is also made into a movie, and the movie obviously is in Reykjavik, and I have been in Reykjavik, and I watched the movie not long after I was in Reykjavik, so like when they were talking about certain streets and certain things, I felt like it was very familiar to me at the time, so then it had that extra layer of familiarity, which I enjoyed. For Norway, I've read a couple of middle grade books, including Sophie's World, which is a very famous one. Yeah, I mean, I think those ones are fine. I think they go into the tradition of Hans Christian Andersen, and they are good books for when you're little. I don't think they are something that I will want to read right now as an adult. Then I also read The History of Bees by Maya Lunde, which is a dystopian about a world in which bees don't exist anymore. And it kind of has 3 timelines, and some of them are like before the bees were disappearing, and the other ones are after it disappeared, and it's kind of this dystopian about climate change, kind of, and how we should treat our environment with more care, and everything is interconnected and that kind of stuff. And I enjoyed it. I think it was a good book. I don't think the writing stood out to me, but I think as a story and as a tale of like dystopian climate fiction, it was one of the first ones, and it did a good job of it. And then after that I read the Septology by Jon Fosse, and this one is a difficult one to talk about. I do have a full video of that because I read it for the International Booker last year, so you can go look at that. But basically this is about two men that have the same name and the same job, and kind of like are located roughly in the same place, and it's kind of like doppelgangers, and they make some decisions at some point that are very different, and that like changes their whole life, and you're not really sure when the author is talking about which one of them, so it's kind of modeled together, and it's written in a very stream of consciousness way, and it was just not for me. I know that a lot of people really like it, and I know that Jon Fosse has been nominated to the Nobel Prize and all of that stuff, but it was just not for me. I found it very repetitive. I found it unnecessarily confusing. I didn't see the point of anything. I didn't think that it was saying anything about anything, and I just didn't enjoy it. I think it was way too long for what it was doing. I think if it was like a novella of this, maybe it would have been interesting, but as a septology, trilogy, whatever you want to call it, it was just way too much. And then finally for Sweden, I have also read a few books, some of them more classic, some of them more middle grade, some of them more new, and yeah, this is also a mix. So first of all, I have read Pippi Longstocking by Astrid Lindgren, and Pippi Longstocking was one of my favorite characters when I was growing up. Like, I watched all the series, all the movies, all the everything, and read the books, and also I think I dressed as her for some carnival kind of thing. So yeah, I really liked her and I liked the books, but again, those are middle grade books, so whatever. I have read some more classic books as well. I have read Tove Jansson, which I know it's a very well-regarded author from Sweden, but I read that when I was a teenager, and I honestly don't remember anything, and I don't think I particularly found this very enlightening or anything. So yeah, I don't know, maybe I should try her again. But somehow I just feel it's not maybe for me, because it sounds a bit like your Annie or Nose and your Deborah Levis and that kind of tone and things, and I just don't find that interesting. I don't think the topics on those kind of books are like that groundbreaking or anything. So yeah, I don't know if I will read her again, but I know it's a very well-regarded Swedish author. And then I also read a couple of Frederik Backmans. I have read a Man Called Uwe and Unctuous People, and I found them very charming and very heartwarming without being kind of silly. So if you want something that feels like a warm hug that is just cozy, and you still don't want something like kind of not very complex or intelligent, I think Frederik Backman is a good place to go. Yeah, it's not something that I would I think it's groundbreaking or anything, but the stories have stayed with me, and the stories have made me feel warm about things, so they are nice. they are nice. And then the last one I wanted to talk about is Wretchedness by Andrzej Tichy, which I read for the International Book Fair a few years ago, and I have a review for it as well. And it was horrible. It was about teenagers being entitled, and yeah, it's a bit like The Catcher in the Rye, but even more entitled, if that's possible. And I just didn't like it. So yeah, unfortunately, that's what it is. So yeah, those are all the books that I've read for the Nordic countries. Let me know if you have read any of these as well, if you want to talk about any of them, and if you have any further recommendations. And if I should read Tove Jansson, you think I should give her another try, let me know. And until next video, bye!